The album It's Only Rock and Roll turns 50 this year. It's Mick Taylor's final album with the Stones, and it has one of the Stones' biggest songs ever. Is the album another overlooked gem? Well, let's rank the songs on It's Only Rock and Roll. Well, for me, at the bottom of the list, I gotta put Short and Curlies. I mean, I don't know why this song exists, to be honest. It's probably just a joke to include it on here, and it's a bit of a fluff kind of a song, but boy, is it one that I just leap for the next button whenever I hear it. It's a great showcase for Ian Stewart on piano, but it does very little for me. It has for me, a very Exile on Main Street vibe on this song in terms of this kind of country barroom sing along harmony vocal aesthetic, which for me connects to Exile on Main Street, at least for me, for some reason. A lot of those harmony vocals were kind of missing on Goat's Head Soup, the previous album. So this song is one of many on It's Only Rock and Roll that has strong harmony vocals by Keith. But that's where the connections to Exile end, because in terms of songwriting or quality, I think it's a bit of a cringy kind of lyric, and it just doesn't work for me. Next, I got to put Till the Next Time We Say Goodbye. It's a nice enough mix song with Keith on the electric slide part, but aside from that, it comes off a little light to me. It has great atmosphere, a great vibe. It's pretty enough, but for some reason, just a little hollow for me. You know, FYI, this album is the first album credited to Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, aka the Glimmer Twins, as sole producers after the departure of Jimmy Miller, who arguably was the producer behind most of their best albums, going from Beggar's Banquet to Goat's Head Soup. Next up, I gotta put If You Really Want to Be My Friend. To me, this is really a collaboration between Mick Jagger and the Blue Magic Group, who provide the, for me, wonderful background vocals on this track. To me, that's what makes this track so unique, is this very smooth and soulful backing vocals provided by Blue Magic, who I don't know how big they were at the time, but they were a band that I guess the Stones or Mick must have enjoyed, because they included their background vocals on this track. They were an R&B soul group from Philly who joined them on this track, and I actually think it's a great little ingredient that really adds a variety to this album. So it's one of the high points for me on the album. And the cherry on top is a very sweet solo by Mick Taylor. Did the song need to be like 5 minutes and 40 seconds? I don't think so. I think they could have shortened it, but they were going for some kind of epic with this song for some reason. I don't think the content really matches the length of the track, but it's the track that is sort of taking the winter slot in this album, like on Goat's Head Soup. Speaking of space, if they had to pick one ballad for this album, I would have voted for this song over Till the Next Time We Say Goodbye. And then next, I'm putting Dance Little Sister. You know, if someone were to get the first 10 seconds of this song and loop it over and over into some kind of like monster 2-hour track, I'm pretty sure I would listen to it all day. There is just something so gorgeous about this track, and it's not much of a song. If you were to write down this song on paper and look at it, you'd go, there's really not much there. It's classic Stones Groove 101. It's just a juicy sandwich between Keith Richards, Charlie Watts, and Bill Wyman, creating this wonderful, gooey thing that is such a joy to listen to. It's the kind of song where you kind of put it on as loud as you can and just dance. That's it. Don't overthink it. I've shared this quote before, but it comes from Jimmy Page, and he says something to the nature of, if you just listen to Dance Little Sister, you can forgive Keith for anything. You see, Jimmy fucking gets it. And at number 6, I'm putting in Luxury. You know, this is tough for me because ask me literally just a week ago, I would have definitely put Dance Little Sister over Luxury. But I have to say, after this deep dive on It's Only Rock and Roll, my love for Luxury shot up considerably than I ever could have expected. This marks the Stones' very first toe dipping into reggae. And a reggae tune in open G tuning, I mean, that's kind of unique. It's a great little number. It's super fun and full of character. Speaking of characters, this is yet another of Mick Jagger's inventions. This character of, it's hard to tell what's going on, but a poor kind of struggling to make ends meet, you know, trying to support his family, working in a refinery, person who's sounds like from the Caribbean or Jamaica because Mick's accent here is obviously calling to that part of the world. And it's to me, the accent is quite well done. You know, you can tell that it's something that he respects and something that he was around because he's got the nuances pretty dialed in. It's pretty incredible if you actually listen to and focus on it. To me, the song is sort of like this Caribbean calypso reggae blues song because in terms of subject matter, the writing, it's about, you know, kind of struggling to provide for his family and just how, rough life is and wanting bigger things in life and, wanting to drink all the rum and fly to Miami and drive a nice fine car, so it's got a little bit of that, like down on his luck, poor kind of place where it's coming from, but aesthetically, it's got a Caribbean, kind of beach vibe with what's going on musically. So it's an interesting mesh there. The song really is a preview of what's to come on the next album, Black and Blue. The Stones would become more and more obsessed with reggae and would really flesh out those ideas more so on that album. All Keith Richards on this track. Mick Taylor does not appear on this track, and that's Keith on the solo. Some great percussion work by Ray Cooper as well. I gotta say, this song really jumped out at me, and it's almost like, where have you been before? So was a pleasant surprise. At number 5, I'm putting Ain't Too Proud to Beg. I mean, this thing, for a lot of people, is their go-to version of the song. Of course, the Temptations version is also very nice, but this is its own monster altogether. It's a much more, I've read people, tip the hat a proto-punk kind of version. It's definitely tougher and a little bit heavier, and it's definitely, typical. Sign of a good cover is that it's put through the band's filter, and this is no exception. Yet another track with Keith Richards providing all the guitars. No Mick Taylor on this track either. A lot of percussion on Ain't Too Proud to Beg as well as provided by Ray Cooper. And you can see why they would have brought someone like Ali E. Brown on the tour with them the following years because there was a lot of percussion on this album. And at number 4, I'm putting If You Can't Rock Me. I don't know why this song isn't as big as all their other huge songs. It's got all the makings of a classic, a great Keith Richards driving guitar, great riff. Charlie is chef's kiss, just impeccable, sounds great, feels great, and you've got a killer Mick Jagger vocal and some great Mick Taylor parts as well on the wah-wah guitar. It's just all there. It's one of their best opening tracks on an album. I would rank this song a little higher, actually, technically on my list, but it was tough this time around to put it here. I've always loved this song. They played it a few times recently back in 2002, maybe 2003 as well, but mostly 2002. But the versions on the 75 and 76 tour, they blended together as a medley with Get Off My Cloud. In your head, it doesn't seem to work, but they actually pull it off. Ray Cooper again appears, providing a lot of percussion on this track, especially during the breakdown. Frankly, I wish this was the single off the album because I think it has way more dynamics and way more of a Stones vibe than It's Only Rock and Roll. Which leads to number 3 on my list, It's Only Rock and Roll. This was very tough because I personally don't find much on this studio version of the song. It's Kenny Jones on drums, who does a fantastic job. And it's Willie Weeks on bass, and I love him. He's a fantastic bass player. Thankfully, Keith on guitar and Ronnie's acoustic guitar is what drives the song. But I think it kind of lumbers along. The only time I really lock in with the song is always towards the end during that outro jam. That's my favorite part. And that always kind of makes me go, oh yeah, this fucking song, rocks. Obviously, it's a classic. But yeah, up to that point, I'm just waiting for that outro jam. And, the magic of the track is, also Keith Richards' Chuck Berry licks all over this track. I mean, the legend is that, it was Mick, Ronnie, and David Bowie, and Kenny Jones, and Willie Weeks at Ronnie's house, working up this song. And they came up with the basic structure and the basic demo of the song. And Mick brought it to the Stones, said, hey, let's do this. And they just could not replicate the vibe and the groove of what they had in the demo. So they just kept the demo. And Keith famously said that he came to Ronnie later. He said, "I took the liberty of wiping all the guitars." And Ronnie said, "Ah, but Keith, you kept my acoustic on there." And Keith says, "Well, that one was okay." You know, so, the new guy's guitar, was kept on. Ronnie was not yet in the band, but they were already beginning to mesh between the 2 worlds, Keith and Ronnie. And Ronnie having a hand in the creation of the song, hence the inspiration by credit, that's on this song, credited to Ronnie Wood. Despite my own feelings about it, the song is obviously a classic. And at number 2, I'm putting Time Waits for No One. No surprise, right? I mean, this is really the centerpiece of the album, I would say. Just absolutely gorgeous playing by all the musicians. Mick Taylor's solo obviously is the magnet here. It's the shining moment, but you also have some fantastic playing, again, by Nicky Hopkins on piano, and Ray Cooper also providing some great percussion throughout it. It's a very unique, it's almost like a cousin or something to Can't You Hear Me Knocking, because it has a little bit of this exotic vibe to it, especially towards the end, and Mick Taylor has said that this is his favorite solo that he's ever put to tape, at least with the Stones. This song is sort of like the center of the album, and it takes on a new weight when you put together this is sort of Mick Taylor's swan song, his farewell to the band is this moment, and it's a hell of a moment, just like Winter was a moment for Mick Taylor on Goat's Head Soup, and Can't You Hear Me Knocking was his moment on Sticky Fingers. Time Waits for No One is Mick Taylor's curtain call, and it's a hell of a moment. And at number 1, I am putting the song Fingerprint File right at the top. I'm sorry, but I am a sucker for this song. And, you know, everyone's top 3 might switch around here for this album, but for my money, Fingerprint File is a unique and funky ass song. And if you don't get it, I'm sorry. One of the best Stone songs ever. Super one of a kind, and to boot, a killer bass line by Mick Taylor. It's a great moment and it's a jam. I mean, if there was any song that had vibes and a feel to it, it's this song. It's mysterious, it's secretive, and it matches the subject matter of being watched and, Big Brother and constantly have surveillance on people. To me, I think the runaway star of the song is Mick Jagger. That vocal performance is so dialed in and perfect. I mean, talk about a movie. If they could make a movie out of that song, I'd watch it. I mean, Mick goes through several different kind of shades in that song vocally. The main song where he's singing kind of as a general narrator, and then all of a sudden, towards the end, during the breakdown where he's kind of talking through the song, "Hey baby, we ain't talking alone. Who's listening? I don't really know." People might think it's a silly song, but I think it's fucking fun as hell. And it's just like one of Mick Jagger's characters, one of many characters on the album, and one of hundreds of characters in the Stones catalog. Keeping eyes peeled on you. Yeah, but these days, it's all secrecy. No privacy. Shoot first. Oh, I just can recite that whole thing. I mean, that is perfect Mick Jagger. Perfect Mick Jagger. Every time I listen to that section at the end, I've got the biggest, dumbest smile on my face. It must be so fun to be Mick Jagger, you know? Ow! Ow! All right. So where does the album stand as a whole? If you asked me a couple of weeks ago, I would have said that it's kind of a ho-hum mixed bag thing. Um, I kind of still am in that same spot, but I think that the album takes some major swings throughout it. I mean, I think they succeed on some very risky things. Time Waits for No One is by no means something that's familiar to them or sounds like anything in their catalog, nor does Fingerprint File or Luxury. Those things are all kind of experiments that the Stones are doing on this album that I think they will go on to perfect later albums, but in some cases, they only did once on this album. The two clunkers on the album for me does put some dents in the album, but by no means does it sink the album. I love that the album has a lot of harmony moments between Mick and Keith. It really is um, something I've been talking about throughout the entire channel. One of the most underrated vocal blends in rock and roll is the Jagger Richards vocal blend, and there is a lot of it on this album. It's all over this album, which is one of the secret sauces that makes the Stones special. In many ways, the album is sort of like a vintage callback to classic Stones. I mean, something like "If You Can't Rock Me" and "Ain't Too Proud to Beg" or "It's Only Rock and Roll" and "Dance Little Sister." These are all very familiar Stones territories that most people would be, familiar to. But there are a lot of departures on the album, like I've already talked about. And this album represents what they always do, which is you'll find some things that are familiar to you as a Stones fan, and you'll see some new things that the Stones are trying out. That they're like, hey, we're going over here now for a second. We're going to try some funk on Fingerprint File. Let's move over to this room, and we'll have a little bit of reggae stuff with Luxury. And they go on to do that on a lot more albums where it's kind of a mix of old and new. And I think this album was the first of them doing that. In the end, I am going to rate It's Only Rock and Roll 3.5, maybe 4 stars on a good day. Don't even get me started on the dreadful mix on this album because that is a huge minus. And I think I've said this before. I think most people don't know that they have a problem with this mix because it's been that way for so long. But I just don't get how this passed quality because it's boxy, it's dull, it's muddy. If there was any album that needed a remix, it was this one. You know, you could say that Goat's Head Soup was too murky and dark, and it was. But luckily, someone said, hey, let's give that to Giles Martin. And he sharpened it up and polished it up, and it sounds great. And I was so waiting for It's Only Rock and Roll to get a deluxe treatment this year, but it doesn't look like it's happening. It's a head scratcher. I don't get it. We can't let this album just fade away with a vintage mix. It needs to be rescued and really cleaned up for a new group of people to enjoy because there is a very good album here that I think people would warm up to if it just had a better delivery and a better sound to it. Let's just hope that we get something on the album's 60th anniversary. So that's my look on It's Only Rock and Roll for its 50th anniversary. So is this an album that you remember listening to back in the day or something you've only listened to recently or just got into? Put it in the comments below. It would be interesting to see how this album fares for everyone in the Stones catalog. Be sure to hit subscribe because we have more It's Only Rock and Roll content coming. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time on Hangfire.